Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 things that you need to do to make sure that you're performing at your peak. Have you ever wanted to sit down and start making your phone calls and you just don't have the motivation? Or maybe you know you want to go door knocking, but you sit in the car for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, dragging your feet of getting out the door and wanting to do it. Or maybe you're at an open house and you just don't know how or what to say. Or you're maybe going to start reaching out to people on social media. All of these things, you want to make sure you're performing at your peak. And these things are actually things that I personally have struggled with many times in my real estate career. And one of the things that significantly helped me was this book. And that is what we're going over today, is chapter 3 of Ninja Selling. And we're going to be going over some of these principles. And I'm going to share with you the 3 things they go over to make sure that you're performing at your peak. But before we share those, I want to talk about the different states of what they talked about in chapter 3, your emotional energy and how that breaks down. So we're going to share my screen here and we're going to go over, we're going to write out a graph here. So imagine there's these quadrants, and at the top we have high and then we have low. Okay. Over on the left side is negative and on the right side is positive. Okay. So the place that you want to be able to perform at your peak, at the absolute best, is going to be at the high positive. Okay? Spelling is still lacking here. Okay? On the same right side, you have your low positive. And then you have your high negative. And then your low negative. Now in Selling Ninja, they talked about these different quadrants and helping you identify where do you spend most of your time. Are you spending your time on the positive side, this side over here, or are you spending your time on the negative side, this side over here? And you have to ask yourself where you're spending your time, because that is where your emotional energy is draining. In a previous video, we talked about how your vibe can be felt by the people around you. When you walk in a room, have you ever walked in a room and you either lift up the vibe or it brings down the vibe? Or let me say it another way. Have you ever sat in a room and somebody walks in and everything just gets funner? Or somebody walks in the room and it's like, oh, it feels more heavy. That's because they're carrying a vibe, and you do too, and people can read those vibes. And this is where we're talking about this emotional energy, where you're storing it. So they go on to talk about, here, according to Dr. Lero's research, this is in chapter 3, it says athletes perform at their best when they're in the high positive quadrant. These are athletes. So athletes visualize them making the free throws. I remember somebody talking about that over and over and over, imagining success. Well, we are corporate athletes, it talks about, and we have to make sure we're performing at our best for our customers. And so we need to have strategies in place to help us improve ourselves or help us get out either from the low positive to the high into the high positive, because ideally this is where we want to play, right here. We want to play in that high positive state. I wrote a note in my book. It says, what are my strategies to get my head into the game? You know that Disney movie, I don't remember what it's called, but it sings it, get your head in the game. And that's what I constantly think about. How can I get my head in the game so that I'm performing it at my best? That's what this chapter is all about. It says, in his observations, players tend to live most of their lives in the high or low positive quadrants. So you're not always going to stay here. You can't. It's extremely exhausting. When I go on listing presentations, or if I'm talking in front of people, it exerts so much energy and I'm at a high, but when I'm done, I'm just, oh man, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. You shift from a high to a low positive state. And most of your day in and day out should be in this low positive state. That means you have a positive outlook on life, but you're not exerting all this energy to perform at your best. So if you find yourself not there, then you are over here, either a high negative or a low negative. And that's where most victims play. We talked about in the previous chapter. Either you're a player or a victim, and people want to work with players. So what mentality does a victim have? Well, a low negative is where they are pessimistic on life. Here, they talked about some of these right here. A low negative is sadness, guilt, depression, loneliness, negative expression. High negatives are anger, fear, frustration, revenge. Negative expectation is usually communicated to other people. They put other people down. A low positive is content, relaxation, safety, love, positive expectation. High positive is happiness, inspiration, confident, love, positive expectation. And we live our lives in these different quadrants. So this whole chapter was really about one thing. How do you get from any of these states to this positive state? We really need to be able to identify that. And they talk about 3 ways to do that, and the book goes on to expound on those, but I'm going to give you a couple of the things that I want to focus on, and maybe you can come along with me and focus on them, okay? And number 1 is, first, you need to be able to have a proven process that delivers predictable results. So it has to be proven and it has to be predictable, okay? Number 2, you need to develop your skills to deliver the process confidently. So how do you build and develop those skills? Through repetition, doing it over and over and over. And third is you need to use a pre-game ritual to help focus and perform at your best. Now in the next chapter, chapter 4, it goes into what some of these rituals are, and we're going to get into that in the next video. But before we actually get there, I wrote some thoughts down for myself, and maybe this will inspire you to do the same. I wrote down here that I need to come up with a pre-game ritual during my creative times. I make videos a lot, and I need to be able to get my mindset to this high-producing mentality so that I'm giving my best for you. I don't want to sit here and talk like this, and because low energy is not really exciting. And I mean, do you really want to watch somebody that talks in a monotone voice all the time? I don't. I want somebody that's passionate about what they're doing. Okay, I need a pre-game ritual before I have to start making my calls so that I actually start making my calls. I always find myself getting out from making my calls. And so having a pre-game ritual to help me get into that mindset will help me be more consistent. And then lastly, I need a pre-game ritual to get myself into the right mindset to really do anything that is hard. I find myself avoiding hard things. Have you ever found yourself there? When something's hard, it's like, oh, I need to do this. I need to write this contract. I need to look for houses for this person. Yet this whole time, you know you need to call this potential for sale by owner because you know they're going to do something in a week or 2, and you need to call them, or they may do something else. But you don't do it and you delay it, and then by the time you do it, the self-prophecy manifests and they end up selling the house because you never made the call. That happens all the time. I don't want to do that. So these rituals are to get you to perform at your best. And so my encouragement for you as we go into chapter 4 is to think of a few different areas of your business that you could find yourself benefiting from creating some rituals. And then in chapter 4, we're going to put together an ideal ritual for ourselves to be able to perform at a high level. So come along with us, guys. Like I said, we're doing all these videos. Down in the description, you'll also find our Facebook group where we come together as like-minded agents, where we train, we support, and we encourage one another. Those are for new agents. And guys, like and subscribe to the video. I greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.